The smell hit me first. Someone had opened the last bag of dark roast I'd been saving. It was the good kind, the kind I bought only when it was just me in the house. I stepped inside and heard laughter coming from the den. Female voices. One of them belonged to Emily, the other older, scratchy, confident. I turned the corner and froze. Her Aunt Lorraine stood at my kitchen counter, pouring herself a mug of coffee. She was wearing a sweatshirt with a beach logo and fuzzy slippers. Slippers I didn't recognize. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't even pause. She stirred in cream, sniffed, made a face, and reached back into my cabinet like she owned the place. "Oh, hey, Sean," she said, like we were meeting at the mailbox. "Emily said you were out running errands." I wasn't sure what to say. My dish towels, my good set, the ones with stitched corners, were hanging damp over the oven handle. Someone had clearly used them. I heard the television from the living room too loud. Sports commentary. I stepped toward the hallway and nearly tripped over a duffel bag. A worn-out suitcase sat next to it, half-zipped with clothes spilling over the side. I caught the faint scent of menthol rub in the air. My heart sank. Emily was sitting on the couch, legs tucked up, eating yogurt. Glenn, her uncle, had his feet on my coffee table, remote in hand, TV volume set to 38. I stared at them, waiting for some explanation. None came. Emily smiled when she saw me. "You're back early. We thought we had time to tidy up before you got in." My mouth opened, then closed. "We figured it's easier to just stay here on weekends now," she added. "Less driving, and your place is so cozy." They looked settled, comfortable, like they'd been here 100 times before. Ezra wasn't anywhere in sight. I hung my purse on the hook and walked slowly into the kitchen. Lorraine had found the raw sugar. I watched her stir again and realized this wasn't a visit. It was a quiet, confident occupation, and no one had asked. I built this house from grit, sweat, and numbers that never quite added up. It took me 18 years to pay off the mortgage, and I did it without help. From a husband who left behind more debt than memories, and from a job that never paid me quite what I was worth. I was a paralegal, not a magician, but I learned how to stretch a dollar without showing the seams. When Ezra got into college, I pulled from a second mortgage to cover the first year. The rest he managed on scholarships and a stack of part-time jobs that made him tired before 25. I never complained. That was the deal. He studied. I worked. I didn't expect him to pay me back. When he married Emily, I told them they could stay in the basement suite while they saved for a deposit. Just temporary, just until they got on their feet. I even stocked it with a microwave, small fridge, clean towels, and a coffee machine I wasn't using anymore. I wanted them to feel welcome. That was 2.5 years ago. Now every weekend, the doorbell doesn't ring. It opens. Emily's mother shows up with grocery bags, but not for me. She restocks their upstairs pantry with snacks I don't eat and juices I didn't know we had. Her cousin naps on my recliner. Glenn watches the Sunday game at a volume I can feel through the floor. They say things like, "We'll just stay through Monday since it's a holiday, and your bathroom has better water pressure." Ezra calls it casual, but there's nothing casual about what happens when the line between guest and resident dissolves. I'd stopped leaving my mail on the hallway table. One afternoon, I caught Emily sorting through it. She said she was looking for her Sephora order. The envelope she tossed aside was my property tax bill. I used to come home and feel the quiet welcome me. Now, I feel like I've walked into someone else's rental. That night, I found Ezra in the garage rearranging bins. "Your family's really making themselves at home," I said lightly. He didn't even look up. They just love the space. By the third weekend in a row, I stopped asking if they were coming. The answer was always yes, even if it wasn't spoken. Glenn's truck would arrive just after noon, tires dragging across the edge of my lawn like it was a gravel driveway. Emily's cousin Whitney brought her own slippers and left them by the back door. She'd started calling my guest bathroom hers. They'd filter in through the kitchen, trailing chatter and casserole dishes that always needed my oven. By Saturday night, the fridge was empty, my coffee creamer gone, my leftover roast gone, my name not mentioned once. I'd wake up to the sound of their voices before I'd even had the chance to brush my teeth. It wasn't just the noise, it was the feeling. My house, once quiet and balanced, had become an open living space for people who didn't look at me when they opened my cabinets. I'd find bath towels balled up under the sink. Emily left her flat iron plugged in on my vanity. Whitney once used my robe, my favorite, the one my sister had sent me last Christmas, and when I said something, she laughed and said, "I thought it was for guests." I tried to bring it up once, gently. Ezra was on the deck grilling burgers, headphones half on. "I was thinking," I said, careful, calm. "Next weekend might be a good one to just have some quiet. Just us." He glanced over. "Why?" "It's been nonstop, and I'd like to invite my sister. She hasn't seen the place since we finished the upstairs." He paused. "I don't want to be on that weekend, on, polite talking about her gluten thing. Your family stresses me out." He said it like a joke, but there was no smile behind it. I didn't reply, just nodded and went back inside. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around the room. Even here, the air didn't feel mine anymore. The scent of Emily's candles clung to the hallway. A towel I hadn't used hung damp on the doorknob. I thought about my sister's visit, and I didn't call her. The suitcase was sitting upright against the wall, zipped halfway, with a pair of socks tucked in the corner flap. Next to it was a reusable grocery bag filled with snacks, chargers, and folded laundry. Glenn's back brace dangled from the top handle. I stood there with my keys still in my hand, staring at the scene like I'd stumbled into a motel lobby. Emily appeared from the hallway with that same rehearsed brightness she used when she knew she was asking too much but didn't care. "We figured staying through Wednesday makes more sense," she said, waving it off like a scheduling decision. "Traffic's brutal this time of year. Hope that's okay." She didn't wait for an answer. Ezra was in the kitchen stirring something on the stove. When I walked in, he barely looked up. "You knew they were staying?" I asked. He shrugged. "It's just a few extra nights." I didn't say anything else. There was no point. I'd already learned the rule. Asking for space made me difficult, and I was supposed to be easy. Upstairs, I opened the guest room door and felt the shift immediately. The eucalyptus bundle I'd tied above the window was gone. The candle I kept on the nightstand had been replaced by a bottle of lotion and a container of pills. Sandra's slippers were at the foot of the bed. Glenn's newspaper stack had spread across the dresser. A plastic tub labeled "extra socks" sat on the armchair. They had unpacked. This wasn't just an overnighter anymore. This room, the one I used to escape to when I needed quiet, when the world got loud, when grief rolled in, I'd kept it soft and simple on purpose. It wasn't much, just mine. Now it smelled like menthol and aftershave. At dinner, Sandra commented on the lavender detergent I used. "It makes Glenn itchy. Would you mind switching to something gentler?" Ezra chewed his food and said nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to Glenn's snoring down the hall and Sandra's slippers padding across the floor. I pulled the notepad from my nightstand and wrote a list. Not a to-do list. Just names, dates, and one sentence. You let them in. Now get them out. I was in the laundry room folding towels when I heard Lorraine's voice drift in from the hallway. She was on the phone, loud, unbothered, like I wasn't there. She said, "Sean is gifting them the house since she's downsizing soon anyway." I stopped folding. My hands froze mid-crease. There was a pause, and then a low laugh. No paperwork yet, but Emily said Sean doesn't believe in all that. She's more of a what's mine is yours kind of person. I stood there for a moment, towel in hand, heart thudding. Gifting. That word settled in my chest like a stone. Not helping, not supporting, not sharing. Gifting. Like I was some fairy godmother handing off property wrapped in ribbon because I had nothing better to do with it. I waited until her voice faded into another room. Then I walked straight to the hall closet where I kept my locked safe. I opened it, pulled out the thick envelope, and spread the papers across the table like a dealer laying down a hand. There it was, in black and white. Sean Elaine Mercer, sole owner, title holder. No co-signers, no joint deed, no implied promises. I didn't feel rage. Not yet, just clarity. The kind that makes your spine sit a little straighter. I slid the papers back into their folder, replaced them in the safe, and locked it twice. Then I picked up my phone and called Vanessa. "You need to come over," I said, "today." She arrived with a binder and 2 coffees, no questions asked. We sat at the dining table while I told her everything. The bathrobe, the robe, the voice, the lie. Vanessa didn't flinch, she just took notes. "They think they're settling into a house that's been handed to them," I said. "They do," she replied. "And you've let them believe that?" I nodded. "That's about to change." That evening, I passed Ezra in the hallway. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and asked if I'd mind watching Glenn's casserole while they ran out for coffee. I smiled back. Then I walked into my room and shut the door. Vanessa didn't gasp when I told her what Lorraine said. She didn't ask if I was sure or tell me I was overreacting. She stirred her coffee twice, leaned back in the chair, and said, "Make it complicated." I blinked at her. "Excuse me? You've tried polite. You've tried waiting for them to get it. They won't. So now," she said, setting her mug down, "you make it complicated, but smart." We sat at my dining table with a notepad and a folder of legal documents she'd pulled from her tote. Vanessa had worked with enough real estate lawyers to know what could be done quietly and effectively. Her suggestions weren't explosive. They were clean. A call to a moving company, a list of belongings, a date, a story. "Tell them you're leaving for a few days," she said. "Something believable. Don't cry, don't threaten, just go." That night, I knocked gently on Ezra's door while he was scrolling through his phone. Emily was brushing her hair at the vanity, already in my robe. "I just got a call from Oregon," I said calmly. "My aunt slipped and broke her wrist. She doesn't have anyone nearby, and I don't feel right ignoring it." Ezra glanced up. "Are you driving or flying?" "I'll fly, but I'll rent a car once I'm there." Emily nodded. "That's so thoughtful of you." Neither offered to go with me. Neither asked how long I'd be gone. I packed one overnight bag. No drama, no comments. I didn't clean the fridge or leave a chore list. I just placed one envelope on my nightstand. Inside was a short note in my handwriting. "If you need space now, you have it." Then I got in my car and drove 22 minutes to Vanessa's condo, where a spare guest room waited and no one had touched my coffee filters. She handed me a glass of wine when I walked in. "You good?" I nodded. "Better than I've felt in weeks." She smiled. "Let's see how good they are without you." And the next morning, a moving truck pulled into my driveway. On the 5th day of my so-called trip, the truck rolled up right on time, 9:00 a.m. sharp. Vanessa had handled the logistics like she was booking a conference. 2 men in clean uniforms stepped out and rang the doorbell with the same cheerful indifference they'd show anywhere else. Emily opened the door, her face a perfect blend of confusion and suspicion. She was wearing one of my old cardigans. "Delivery for Glenn and Sandra," one mover said, glancing at his clipboard. "Address matches 9112 Silver Hill." "What delivery?" she asked. He turned the page around and showed her the manifest. Boxes labeled Mercer and Master Closet, queen-size mattress, 2 dressers, side table, 1 recliner, cookware, looks like a full setup. Emily blinked. "There's no way." But Glenn stepped up behind her and nodded, proud. "That's us. Bring it in." The movers got to work. The mattress went straight into the guest room. Dressers flanked the walls. My armchair, the one I hadn't really liked but hadn't replaced, was dragged into the corner. The boxes stacked higher than the bed. It was all theirs now, or so they thought. By the time Ezra got home from work, the hallway smelled like sweat and cardboard. Sandra was labeling drawers. Glenn was trying to get the recliner to fit under the window. Ezra dropped his keys and looked around like he'd walked into a stranger's house. "What the hell is going on?" Sandra turned, beaming. "Isn't it great? Emily said we could really settle in while she's away," Glenn added. "She even arranged the movers. Thoughtful, huh?" Ezra didn't respond. He just walked into the bedroom and saw the envelope still on the nightstand. He opened it again. It hadn't changed. He tried calling twice. I let it ring out. Then I saw his text. "Can we talk?" 3 hours later, I replied, "Hope hosting is going well." At Vanessa's, I was making pasta, a simple dinner in a quiet kitchen. No one asked where the salt was. No one changed the thermostat. And when I woke the next morning, I didn't hear a single footstep but my own. At first, Ezra tried. I could see it in the photos he sent. Burnt lasagna on chipped plates, a crooked attempt at folded laundry on the guest bed. He even captioned one picture, Chef Ezra in action, like humor could fill the silence I left behind. Sandra called me twice a week, each time with that tight, careful tone people use when they realize they've pushed too far. "Hi, sweetheart. Are you planning to come back anytime soon?" I kept my answers brief. I thought it was temporary, too. There was a long pause before she hung up. Ezra's messages shifted from lighthearted to strained. "Do you know where the vacuum bags are?" one said. Another, "The washer smells weird. Was it always like that?" Then, "I can't find your coffee grinder. Emily says it used to be in the corner cabinet." I didn't answer. Vanessa caught me scrolling through the texts and said, without looking up, "They thought you were invisible until you vanished. That's the thing about presence. It becomes noticeable only after it's gone." I nodded and turned my phone over. Later that week, I finally responded to Ezra. He'd sent a long message about how things were overwhelming, how he missed the normal rhythm, how he was trying to make it work. But at the end, he wrote, "They're my parents. I can't kick them out." That was the sentence, the one I'd been waiting for. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed what I'd already known. He wouldn't choose me. Not over the noise, not over the comfort of letting other people fill the space I'd carved. He was raised in the home I built, but somehow forgot who built it. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't argue or explain. Instead, I emailed Vanessa's friend, the one who'd helped us review the title and deed. Subject line, separation terms. Within the hour, I had a clean draft in my inbox, and the only thing left to do was sign. The separation agreement landed in my inbox just after lunch. 5 pages, no drama. Vanessa's lawyer friend had crafted it carefully. No accusations, no venom, just lines. Clear, cold, necessary lines. I read it twice, then I signed. It wasn't a divorce, not yet. But it was the first time Ezra would see something written down that didn't bend around his comfort. It was the first time I drew a boundary and didn't wait to see how he'd feel about it. The house deed was in my name. The land title, too. He hadn't insisted on adding himself when we refinanced 3 years ago. "It's all ours anyway," he said. Now that worked in my favor. I pulled up the banking app next, redirected my paycheck, moved the rest into a separate account, left exactly $47 and change in the joint one, just enough not to trigger a notice. 3 hours later, Ezra called. "You froze the money." "I redirected my deposit," I said calmly. "You should do the same." "You could have told me." "I just did." He cursed under his breath and hung up. A week later, I got a notification from a real estate app I'd forgotten to uninstall. New listing, 912 Silver Hill Lane. Motivated seller, flexible timeline, minor repairs needed. I clicked through the photos. The house looked hollow, not empty, just off. The living room was cluttered with mismatched chairs and old magazines. Glenn's foot massager sat beneath the coffee table. Yellow sticky notes were taped to the kitchen drawers. "Do not touch. Ask first. Glenn's shelf." In one of the guest room photos, I spotted a pile of unfolded laundry on the bed. Sandra must have moved the eucalyptus bundle back, but it hung limp and brown. My name had been scraped off the mailbox. Vanessa leaned over my shoulder and studied the listing. "That looks like a Craigslist rental with emotional damage." I laughed, quiet and tired. "You going to buy it back?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't need it. I already left." And the next morning, I picked up my rental keys. Townhouse. 2 floors and a balcony with no chairs but mine. The townhouse wasn't big, but it didn't need to be. I chose it for the morning light and the deep tub, for the balcony that caught the breeze just right, and the quiet that didn't have to be earned. No one walked through my hallway without knocking. No one adjusted my thermostat or borrowed my robe. The coffee stayed where I left it. The towels dried where I hung them. I didn't lock the door out of habit anymore. I locked it because it was mine. On Sundays, I hosted coffee brunches, just 2 or 3 friends, mismatched mugs, and fresh bread from the corner bakery. We didn't talk about anyone's in-laws. We didn't lower our voices. We laughed without flinching. I repotted my snake plant and gave it a name, taught the neighbor's daughter how to roll pie crust without overworking the dough, found my rhythm again, slow, steady, uninterrupted. I kept the same phone number, didn't block anyone. I didn't have to, most people figured it out. But then, months later, a voicemail came through. "Hi, Sean, it's Sandra. I was hoping we could talk, nothing heavy, just coffee, just to..." I deleted it before she finished. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Some doors don't need to be reopened just because someone knocks. Ezra hadn't called since the house sold. Word from a mutual friend was that he'd moved in with a coworker while figuring things out. He hadn't asked for help. I hadn't offered, and that was its own kind of grace. Sometimes peace isn't found in loud victories or legal wins. It's found in mornings where the only voice you hear is your own, choosing the music, setting the pace. I still kept a list in my nightstand drawer, not of what I lost, but of everything I reclaimed. Space, rest, voice, time, name. No one took those from me. I handed them away, slowly, thoughtfully, willingly. But when I took them back, I did it without apology. And that afternoon, I sat on the balcony with a mug of coffee, alone, in the quiet. Finally.